of security and peace. So this will go down the history as the largest event held, and also the largest international gathering to be held in Seoul. So both for South Korea and for the world, this will be a very historic moment for the security,
and
security.
The amount of effort that's been put in to organize this event is just immense. I had a chance to talk to some of the volunteers who are working behind the scenes, and the request that they have to deal with is just phenomenal.
Right.
Yeah.
The kind of passion and sacrifice that they're putting into really actually it has made this possible, the first day of the Nuclear Security Summit, and that is how it's being kicked off today. And we're looking at the reception hall of the leaders' reception, and we have another leader walking in, and he is the president or crown prince of the United Arab Emirates, crown prince of Abu Dhabi, and deputy supreme commander of UAE Armed Forces, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan. So crown prince Al Nahyan of the United Arab Emirates walking in. Now there's a hug. So another hug. I know that the UAE and Korea just recently signed a very big nuclear power plant production or construction treaty between the two countries. And President Lee Myung-bak was actually there in UAE not too long ago, and that's probably where they formed this close relations.
Right.
So United Arab Emirates, Crown Prince.
A firm handshake right there.
Firm handshake right there, and a hug. And United Arab Emirates is, of course, another country that is looking to rely on nuclear energy based on nuclear power plants to be constructed by South Korea. So, all right, I'm sure they will have lots to discuss also on the sidelines of the summit between the two leaders. And another leader walking in, and he is the Vice President of Brazil, Michel Temer. Vice President of Brazil, Michel Temer. Brazil is, of course, a very big country.
Right. It also has a history of nuclear power plants dating back to the 30s, but it also took steps to control and restrict nuclear programs, also symbolically closing down one nuclear test site. So it's been really, this country has been at the forefront of pursuing peaceful use of nuclear
Right,
programs.
Another example of a country that's pursuing peaceful use of nuclear energy. It has 2 nuclear reactors generating about 3% of the entire electricity, and a third under construction. 4 more large reactors are planned to come by 2025, so another country that is reliant on the peaceful use of nuclear energy. Vice President Michel Temer of Brazil attending the Seoul Nuclear Security Summit here in Seoul. All right, so that was the head delegate from Brazil. So it must be hard for President Lee Myung-bak to handshake every one of them, so many of them. All right, we have our Prime Minister of Thailand, one of the few female head delegates here at the Seoul Summit, Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawat. Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawat. I know that she's very interested in South Korea's management of water, and she most recently, as recent as yesterday, visited one of Korea's 4 rivers restoration project sites.
Right. She was there at the Ipo.
Right, that's right. And she held a bilateral summit with President Lee Myung-bak on the first day of her arrival here in South Korea, which was, I believe, if I'm not wrong, I believe was Saturday, was it?
She was there over the weekend.
Yeah, so Saturday she held a bilateral summit with President Lee Myung-bak, and it looks like they became quite close after that bilateral summit. And Thailand So the Prime Minister of Thailand, Yingluck Shinawatra, one of few female leaders representing their country.
And leaders coming in from these tropical nations must be quite surprised by the weather that we're experiencing in Seoul today.
I mean, we're quite surprised ourselves because we faced such cold weather in late March. It's not the kind of weather that we would expect in late March, but
it's very unusual.
Very unusual.
I had to bring out my winter jacket today.
Yes, me too. But it's a good thing we're staying indoors,
right.
And we're looking at the hallway for the welcome reception of the Seoul Nuclear Security Summit. And we have a next leader coming in. And from Algeria, is it Algeria?
Right, Algeria.
Yes, from Algeria, and he is the president of the Council of Nations. Abdelkader Ben Salah. Abdelkader Ben Salah walking in. So tell us a little bit about that country and our relations with them.
Well, Algeria is an oil-producing nation, huge exporter of crude and natural gas. And the South Korea's Deputy Economy Minister also visited this country to further explore cooperation with South Korean businesses back in 2009. And this country also aims to build its first commercial nuclear power plant in 2020.
Right, so this will really be a venue where, you know, nuclear security and the peaceful use of nuclear energy, nuclear safety will be distinguished. And Prime Minister of Australia, of course, Prime Minister Julia Gillard. Prime Minister Julia Gillard of Australia. Now, I know it was very interesting a few years back after exchanging bisous or greeting kisses with President Lee Myung-bak, she actually erased her lipstick mark for President Lee Myung-bak, and that made headlines in some countries.
Right.
And yeah, just Julia Gillard is here, Australia. Now, Australia is one of those countries very concerned with North Korea's planned rocket launch next month, as it's in the vicinity of being affected by that rocket launch. And there they are, holding hands and shaking hands. Right,
Prime Minister Gillard has been very vocal about North Korea's planned rocket launch, condemning actions, and there were some concerns that it might pass over Australia, but she reaffirmed those.
Part of condemnation for North Korea. Now, Deputy Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Nick Clegg, Deputy Prime Minister of England, Nick Clegg, walking in, and
this is his first visit to South Korea.
Oh, is it?
After he took office in 2010.
And so, what kind of a relations? Well, it's a given that we have very tight relations with the UK. But on top of that, is there anything interesting about our bilateral relations, or its stance on nuclear activities?
Well, the United Kingdom ratified the convention in the Washington Communique back in 2010 to criminalize nuclear terrorists. So this country actually passed domestic law to penalize terrorists not only in the conventional sense but also nuclear terrorists. So they have been really following up on the Washington Nuclear Security Summit in 2010.
All right, so that was the head delegate of the United Kingdom walking in for the Seoul Nuclear Security Summit. I think we're about halfway there with the leaders' reception. So we had the leader of UK walking in just now.
And one difference that we're seeing here is the First Lady, Kim Yoon-ok, is not present.
Yes, that's right. Netherlands. So Netherlands, Prime Minister Mark Rutte was supposed to attend the summit, but I believe Foreign Minister Uri Rosenthal has taken that role and has come to Korea for the Nuclear Security Summit. So that's Foreign Minister of the Netherlands, Uri Rosenthal. This, of course, was one of the last-minute changes that were made in terms of leaders' presence here in Korea.
That's right. And Netherlands will be the host of the next Nuclear Security Summit in 2014.
Has that been made final?
The official word hasn't been come out yet,
so it hasn't been officially confirmed yet, but word is it will host the next Nuclear Security Summit in 2014.
Right. The official announcement will be made once the Seoul Security Summit.
So hopefully it'll be made at the end of the day tomorrow, and we'll know by then whether it is the host of the Nuclear Security Summit in 2014. So
파키스탄 길라니 총리입니다.
Pakistan, is it?
Right.
Prime Minister Saeed Yousaf Raza Gilani, Prime Minister Gilani of Pakistan. Now, Pakistan. Pakistan and Korea has closely coordinated and consulted each other in various issues, I know, and it's really been supporting South Korea in various international organizations. We have many workers contributing to the economic prosperity from Pakistan here in Korea, and they actually have the 27th largest in the world in terms of purchasing power. Wow, I didn't know that.
Right.
So Prime Minister Gilani, you know, before coming to the summit, he did say, Prime Minister Gilani of Pakistan said there really is a need for the world to come up with a strategy to safeguard fissile materials that can be used for weapons of mass destruction. So he is one very strong advocate of scrapping the nuclear weapons here in the world and not letting that fall in the hands of terrorists. So that was Prime Minister of Pakistan. And we're looking at the hallway of the welcome reception of leaders participating in the 2012 Seoul Nuclear Security Summit. And we're bringing you a live coverage of that right here from the International Media Center at COEX. And this, actually the hallway where the leaders are walking in is just steps away from here. Right, so they are coming to the venue here, COEX, for their working dinner, which will be their first encounter with each other.
Exactly.
At the summit, and hopefully many things, including peaceful use of nuclear energy, but most importantly, to prevent nuclear materials from falling into the hands of terrorists will be addressed during this working dinner, among others.
And then what's an interesting fact when I was talking to the volunteers, the diplomatic liaison officers, these world leaders have requests, such as they don't want their heads of state to be left out in these discussions.
Right.
So they're asking for a better seat, maybe, to make sure that they have extra cars. But some of these requests, they are trying to accommodate to them, but they, unfortunately, some of them cannot be met.
Right, not all can be met, and you know, we do our best. The Korean government is doing its best to accommodate all the needs from the leaders, but there really is a limit. But hopefully most of the requests have been answered.
Right, and there are requests by foreign media journalists as well, trying to secure a better spot for their cameras, extra media passes for their
There's
channels.
always fight over good spots among our camera journalists, of course. And you're looking at the exterior of COEX Convention Center, the very venue of the 2012 Seoul Nuclear Security Summit. Now, this is where 58 heads of state and international organizations will convene a meeting or working dinner over nuclear terrorism and over beyond terrorism, is it? For peaceful prosperity, the slogan of the 2012 Seoul Nuclear Summit?
We see it being posted
everywhere
around Seoul all the time, especially on the buses, public transportation. There are posters and banners hanging everywhere. So this has been really an event that garnered a lot of support from the citizens of Korea and in Seoul.
Right, and the official agenda, of course, does not include North Korea's nuclear program, but we're sure that it will dominate the hallway talks among leaders.
It just comes in a timely manner with North Korea's announcement of the rocket launch. So it's almost impossible not to talk about North Korea, although it's not part of the main agenda.
Right, and taking into account the large number of bilateral summits by President Lee Myung-bak, I'm sure many of those bilateral summits will center around North Korea's announced rocket launch for next month and, global condemnation for urging North Korea not to do so. Right, and of course, U.S. President Barack Obama and President Lee Myung-bak made that clear during their news conference last night that North Korea will not be gaining anything from that.
And it's been gaining a lot of support from other world leaders as well, condemning North Korea's actions and announcements. Namely, the Australian Prime Minister was very vocal about it, and it's very rare that Chinese President Hu Jintao would chime in to bring support on this issue. But earlier today, with Chinese President Hu Jintao and President Lee Myung-bak held bilateral talks, and the Chinese President said he will support to pressure North Korea to stop this rocket launch.
Chinese President Hu Jintao did say that Beijing is doing the best it can do to make Pyongyang give up its nuclear weapons. So that's a rare, very strong comment and very strong words of support from China. So one thing that we should be taking a look out on in the near future. Now, Nuclear Security Summit in Seoul is the largest event to be held here in Seoul and the largest gathering of its kind in the world ever held in history. So South Korea is really trying to make this event a stepping stone into to show the global world of its rise already. It's risen to a global status and a responsible leader in the international community.
And this is a great opportunity to promote Korea.
Oh, sure.
And Korean culture, Korean food. If you take a walk around the media center, you have different booths that you can try on traditional costumes and traditional food.
Right. And, right here at the International Media Center, we can really see all the media and journalists from around the world just rushing to cover this event, and 3,700 journalists from across the world, which means all the coverage, all eyes are on Seoul right now. So very good opportunity for us to promote Korea and promote Seoul. But not only that, Nuclear Security Summit is a venue, as President Lee Myung-bak said, to promote peaceful use of nuclear energy. Now, one of our few female leaders walking in, and she is the Prime Minister of Denmark, Helle Thorning-Schmidt. Prime Minister Helle Thorning-Schmidt of Denmark. The Danish Prime Minister walking in.
Denmark is also a newcomer to the Nuclear Security Summit. Denmark was given the invitation by President Lee Myung-bak to attend the Seoul 2012 Nuclear Security Summit.
Right, so they come on a personal invitation by President Lee Myung-bak, one of the 3 countries invited this time around, I believe.
That's right. But the diplomatic relations between Denmark and South Korea go back to 1959.
So, over half a century of diplomatic relations between the 2 countries, and they've come here on an invitation by President Lee Myung-bak. We just saw the entrance of the Prime Minister of Denmark, Prime Minister Helle Thorning-Schmidt, walking in to be greeted by President Lee Myung-bak. Now, coming up next is the President of Chile, President Piñera. And we, of course, saw a lot of him after the Chilean mining accident, and we saw his leadership and his outcry to the people, and his leadership was best proved by what kind of a unity he brought among the Chilean people.
Right. And it also holds a very special relationship with South Korea because of the free trade agreement that was signed in 2004.
Right, it has made Chilean wine so much less expensive for us. It was a very good sign for me.
I wonder if they're talking about wine right now.
Well,
But
they
a
seem to
strong
be very happy
handshake
to see each other. So that was the president of Chile attending the Nuclear Security Summit.
It always makes me wonder what the leaders are talking about in these welcoming receptions.
Other than the usual greetings, because some of them have a longer time staying with the President Lee Myung-bak, and they have quite an exchange of words, and we wonder what's going on between them.
And I'm also curious about the language that they're speaking.
Oh, yeah, good point.
I mean, a lot of the leaders, well, some of the leaders are bilingual or multilingual, and they speak English.
총리입니다.
Right. Well, just as we speak, we have the Prime Minister of New Zealand walking in. John Key, Prime Minister John Key of New Zealand, walking in to be greeted by President Lee Myung-bak.
And New Zealand has been a country, a long-standing nuclear-free status, and is one of the very few countries with a complete nuclear-free state.
Right, and he held a summit talks with President Lee Myung-bak on Sunday, and he, together with President Lee Myung-bak, urged North Korea to scrap its plan to launch a long-range rocket, and it condemned the secretive regime. It strongly supports South Korea in the face of North Korean provocations.
Actually, a lot of the countries, they possess nuclear materials for their energy purposes or for other civilian usage, but New Zealand actually has no nuclear material, but it possesses radioactive material for medicinal purposes.
Right. And Lee and Key actually agreed to work closely together to implement the envisioned Seoul Communique to be adopted at the nuclear conference. So a lot of interest there and support from the New Zealand Prime Minister to President Lee Myung-bak in South Korea. And that was Prime Minister John Key of New Zealand walking in for the welcoming reception. You're looking at the hallway of the COEX Reception Center Hall, where 58 leaders are walking in for the 2012 Seoul Nuclear Security Summit. When President Lee Myung-bak is personally greeting them one by one by either a handshake or a hug or even bisou, kisses.
Right.
So that's interesting to see.
시행
Now, the
총리입니다.
Prime Minister of India, Manmohan Singh. So, Prime Minister of India, Manmohan Singh. I know that the Prime Minister said he's prepared a national report which will be shared during the summit, where the report will highlight the high priority India attaches to nuclear security, safety,
There you go. They're hugging right now.
and non-proliferation, and India's impeccable record in this regard. So they are very proud of their clean record of nuclear security, safety, and non-proliferation. And Prime Minister Manmohan Singh has prepared a national report which will be shared during the summit.
And he also held bilateral talks with President Lee on Sunday.
So Prime Minister Manmohan Singh of India. And we're looking at the hallway of the reception center right here at COEX, just steps away, where the leaders of these global countries walking in to participate in the 2012 Seoul Nuclear Security Summit.
Right.
This is the biggest number of global leaders at one place together that we've seen in South Korea. So it's quite an exciting time for us and for other journalists as well.
And the issue of nuclear terrorism is something that may be an issue that's not too familiar to the general public, but it's something that is very imminent. It's an imminent threat to
Absolutely.
the people around the world.
니니스테 대통령입니다.
President of Finland, Sauli Niinistö. President Sauli Niinistö of Finland walking in to be greeted by President Lee Myung-bak. Now, Finland's nuclear power program has had 4 nuclear reactors as of 2008, in 2 power plants, and the first of which came into operation in 1977. It makes up about nearly 30% of Finland's total electricity needs. So Finland is one other country which is highly dependent on nuclear energy for its electricity demands. Another reactor, a 5th one, is under construction and scheduled to go online next year, so that's another thing to look out for. And the Finnish public is among the most nuclear power-friendly nations in the European Union.
This is also the Finnish president's first visit to South Korea since he took office in 2012. So a newly elected president.
A newly elected leader from Finland walking in, greeted by President Lee Myung-bak, and I'm assuming that it's his first nuclear security summit as the president of Finland, since he only came into office in January
2012. So we have a lot of new leaders coming in. We also see some old faces, leaders who've been in office for a very long time.
Yes.
총리입니다.
Prime Minister of Turkey, Erdogan. Prime Minister of Turkey, Recep Tayyip Erdogan. We've seen him many times as well. President Lee Myung-bak has held a number of bilateral summits with the Prime Minister of Turkey, Erdogan.
And also, the 2 countries, Turkey and South Korea, have a very strong partnership with the FTA.
Right, and also because Turkey fought for South Korea during the South Korean War, Turkey always likes calling South Koreans their blood brothers. So our brothers, Prime Minister of Turkey, Recep Erdogan.
But in terms of nuclear security, the Prime Minister of Turkey has plans to visit Iran next month to discuss the results of the Seoul communique. So the attention is definitely on.
Right, so that should definitely be something that we should closely look. President of South Africa, President Zuma of South Africa walking in to be greeted by President Lee Myung-bak, President Jacob Zuma. South Africa is another country that Korea is very familiar with. It's where Pyeongchang was elected as the host for the 2018 Winter Olympics. It had been a dream for us for many, many years, and South Africa was actually the venue where it made that possible. And I was there myself covering, and that's President Zuma from South Africa.
Also, this is his second visit to the COEX Convention Center since the G20 G20 summit in 2010.
All right, so it must be a friendly, or rather
big
familiar
smile
place.
there
Yes,
from
familiar
the South
place for
African
President Zuma.
President.
I think we're close to nearing the end of our broadcast here, as most of the leaders have already entered the summit, and according to protocol, it's said that officially the one with the highest priority walks in the latest, arrives the latest. So it remains to be seen who will be the last one walking in that entrance to the venue of this.
We still haven't seen the U.S. President Barack Obama, the Chinese President Hu Jintao, the 2 key players. Also, we haven't seen the leader from Japan,
Prime Minister of Japan. We haven't seen him.
So still, the key players,
right? And we haven't seen Secretary General Ban Ki-moon of the United Nations either.
Right.
So those are some of the leaders who will be walking in later, perhaps have taken a higher priority over others, but nonetheless, all the same to President Lee Myung-bak, the host of the summit.
Right.
And we're looking at the hallway for the welcoming reception of the Nuclear Security Summit. And today is the first day of the Nuclear Security Summit, and with their welcoming reception here, which kicked off at 4:30 p.m. Korea time, it will begin the 2-day summit. Prime Minister of Vietnam, and he is Prime Minister of Vietnam, Nguyen Dong Trung, Prime Minister of Vietnam. And he's walking to be greeted by President Lee Myung-bak.
Vietnam announced in 2010 that it plans to build 14 nuclear reactors in 5 provinces by 2030. And one of the agendas of the nuclear summit is nuclear safety.
Sure.
And controlling and ensuring security of nuclear materials, ensuring safe and a peaceful use of nuclear energy. So this will be an interesting topic for Vietnam as well.
Right, so a plan of building 14 nuclear reactors by 2030. Very ambitious nations in terms of peaceful use of nuclear energy, Vietnam. Vietnam is also South Korea's 8th largest trading partner. Exports in fiber, steel, and synthetic resins dominate the exports, so a very big trading partner for Korea. Thus, the strong relations between the two countries.
Also, the nation has a history of being a divided nation between
Sure.
North and South. So, as the Korean Peninsula is still divided,
We share the same
that
pain.
sentiment.
Right, definitely.
노르웨이 스톨텐베르그 총리입니다.
And we have next the head delegate from Norway. The head delegate from Norway, Prime Minister Jens Stoltenberg. Prime Minister Jens Stoltenberg of Norway, walking in. And I know that there is strong relations between South Korea and Norway, especially in recent days.
Right, South Korea and Norway have signed several agreements which regulates both trading and economical matters. And the trade between the two countries has developed especially in the last 20 years.
So a very new partner in terms of trade with South Korea, Norway.
And Norway also has an extensive reserve of petroleum, natural gas, minerals, lumber, so also a largest producer of oil and natural gas.
So a very resource-rich country, which of course as a country without much resources, South Korea could be very close ties with, could have close relations with.
국제연합 반기문 사무총장입니다.
All right, no need to say United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, South Korean national. He was the foreign minister of South Korea some years ago. Secretary General held the first bilateral summit during this period with President Lee Myung-bak on the first day of
You
his
think there'll
tour
be a
here.
handshake or a hug?
I highly doubt there will be a hug between two Korean men, Hanu. So yes, that
You're
is
right, Kan-young. I
Secretary
don't think
General
so.
Ban Ki-moon. And this time I don't have doubt that which language they're speaking in.
Right.
Right, and
The only leader who President Lee Myung-bak can speak in Korean.
right. So the two leaders, of course, during their bilateral summit earlier in the week, the two agreed and condemned North Korea strongly and called North Korea's planned rocket launch a grave provocation. A grave provocation. And of course, President Lee Myung-bak thanked Secretary General Ban Ki-moon for a quick response from the United Nations following the announcement by North Korea on that rocket launch. Of course, United Nations Secretary General his mind's probably very filled with North Korean issue, as North Korea has, or should it launch the rocket, it would be a violation of United Nations Resolution 1874.
Right.
So,
although North Korea denies claims
Sure.
that it's a scientific experiment, we highly doubt that
헝가리
is the
슈미트
case.
대통령입니다.
all right, next, head delegate from Hungary. We have head delegate from Hungary, President Paul Schmidt. President Paul Schmidt of Hungary walking in to be greeted by President Lee Myung-bak.
Hungary is also a new state that has been invited to the Seoul Nuclear Security Summit this year. And the President, Paul Schmidt, is expected to hold bilateral talks with President Lee Myung-bak on the 29th.
On the 29th, so they have yet to hold a bilateral summit. Nonetheless, they look very comfortable with each other.
Right, and Hungary has been taking active steps to reduce its nuclear stockpiles of highly enriched uranium. So it's a country that will continue to improve the security of its nuclear materials.
Right, Hungary, another country where the president has expressed concern about North Korea's planned rocket launch, and it has stated that it is a clear breach of United Nations Security Council resolution.
하퍼 총리입니다.
All right, and we have Prime Minister Stephen Harper from Canada. Stephen Harper from Canada walking in. I know that Canada is one country many Korean students visit or make a trip to learn English.
Right, and the diplomatic relations between the two countries has been established in the 60s, 1963. Also his second visit to the COEX Convention Center.
Right, there was almost half a hug there.
Right.
But nonetheless, very
A big smile.
a big